If I had to learn just one skill for AI automation, it would be understanding how APIs work, because fundamentally they are the things that allow softwares to speak with other softwares. And so once you really understand how APIs work, you'll be able to use N10, Zapier, Make.com, Power Automate all with no problems, without getting stuck and without any limitations. And the problem is most people skip this. They go straight to the platforms to build automation step by step. And when something breaks, they have no clue why. So in this video, I'm gonna break down exactly how APIs actually work, how to read an API documentation without freaking out, and how to build your first real API request inside of N10. Let's dive in. All right, so API stands for Application Programming Interface. A very fancy term that nobody even knows the meaning to, but what it means is the ability for softwares to speak with other softwares. Now think of a waiter in a restaurant, right? This waiter has the chef, and he has the customers. And between the chef and the customers, there's a series of actions that happen, right? So take the order, bring the order from the kitchen, they deliver the order, make the order. There's a whole repetitive loop that happens over and over again. And so that is the exact same when it comes to APIs for softwares, where we have one software here, and these two softwares communicate to each other through a series of requests and responses. So the request in this case would be to make the order. The response would be the actual order being delivered to their table. And that is the exact same when it comes to these softwares. And so fundamentally, the waiter in this case is the API, and the chef is one software, and the customers are other softwares. And this right here is the thing that allows the softwares in Make.com and N10 to speak to each other, to be able to have a sequential order. So we send data to a place and get something back, and that's how automations and AI agents are built. Now, what can APIs do with softwares? There's a few things that APIs can do. We call them requests. So requests are just a way for the server, the API server, to send information to the actual software itself to then create an action. Now, the first thing it can do is post. So this is when any type of new record is created in a software. So this is like making a Google Sheet row. It's creating a contact on ClickUp, a contact on HubSpot. It's sending information to OpenAI to make a LinkedIn post. This is a post request, which is sending information from one place to another. Then we have get. So get is extracting any details from any record from the software. So let's say someone filled out a form on your website. You wanted to get the information from that form and then use it for whatever you want. Right now you're getting information because the information is going from somewhere else to us. That's getting information. Then we have put or patch, which is updating records in a software. So let's say John's name is not John anymore, it's James. Then you use a put or patch request, right? So updating information. And then we have deleting. So you can't see this fully, but it's deleting a record from a software. So let's say we had a Google Sheet or maybe a contact. We just want to delete the row or delete the Google Sheet, or we just wanted to delete the contact. That is a delete request. So again, post is to send information, get is to get information, then put or patch is to update information, and then delete is to delete information from somewhere. Now I'll share a story here. So I was on a call with a client a while back, and she asked to automate different parts of her onboarding process. And she used Zoho CRM as the CRM, which by the way is just a place for companies to store information, to be able to send information to Zoho to make a new contact whenever someone filled out a form. Now, the problem is I had never used Zoho CRM. So I never used it. I didn't know exactly what you can and cannot automate with Zoho CRM, which is why we get to the next part, which is finding the information of what you can automate and cannot automate within a software. So all I did is a simple Google search, and I searched up the software name. So in this case, it can be Zoho CRM, Monday, it can be OpenAI, it can be whatever it is. API documentation. And this is where we get to the fundamental concept of an API documentation, which allows us to be able to see exactly what you can automate within a software and how to set everything up. Now, here's an example of an API documentation. This is Apollo's API documentation. And at first, you think this is way too complex. But the reality is, if you understand how this looks, all the others will be very, very easy because they all follow a very similar structure. So the way that an API documentation works is that on the left-hand side, right here, you get to see all the types of requests. So this is enriching people, it's searching people, searching organizations, creating an account. There's different things that you can do within Apollo's API, which means automatically without having to go to Apollo, right? And so each action right here, so each thing that we can do has a corresponding type of request that follows through. So people enrichment, in this case, would be a post request because we're sending information to the server and then it's enriching the person. Then we have, let's say, organization enrichment, which is a GET request, or update an account, which is a PUT request, right? So we have different types of requests and different actions that we can do using Apollo automatically within our automations. And the only way to know is actually just looking here. Now, let's say we go to people enrichment. So this will now look at what you can do within that specific request, which in this case is enriching people. And this request right here has the type of request and then has a URL. Now, the URL is something that is very, very important in our API requests because they are the thing that allows us to be able to send the information the right way. It's sort of like going to google.com, right? The server knows that you want to go to google.com because of the request, because of the URL. And so this is the exact same because this allows the server to know, hey, he wants to use Apollo and he wants to enrich people. And then in the middle here, it gives us a summary as to what it is, how it works, and so on. So these down here are basically saying, hey, this is the type of request. So right here, this is the information you have to send to the server to call the request to make it happen. In this case, it's enriching people, and you have to send the first name and the last name, right? And those are the details that you have to look into understanding exactly what to send to the server. And on the right-hand side, you get to see the actual setup. So how can we set this up in our automation platforms? And quick side note, the reason why we look at the API documentation is because here, if I go to Apollo, I can't find it, which means that now we have to set up the API request using the documentation. And so the left-hand side is the type of request. The middle is to show you the exact request and sort of to give you a summary of what it is and what it looks like. And the right-hand side is saying, okay, we have the request, we have the summary, here's how you can set it up. Now, the main thing that we have to look at when we have to set up an API request through an API documentation is the curl. Now, the curl is the thing right here that you see, which basically gives us a heads up or an understanding of how the request actually works. And if I go to Anytime right here and I go to HTTP request, which is the thing that we use to make the actual request, we can see that we have a button right here, which is import curl. And this will be the place where we import the curl, which is the one that we saw on the API documentation. And then this basically makes the whole request for us, which I'll show you in just a second. Now, this will make much more sense once we actually build the API request, which is super damn easy. So don't worry, we'll go through it step by step. But now you got to see what a structure of an API documentation looks like. And this is for a software called Apollo. Now, if I go to the second API documentation, this right here is for a software called Instantly, which is a cold email software. As you can see, it follows the exact same structure. On the left-hand side, we get to see all the actions that we can take. On the middle, it tells us this is the summary or this is what it is. And these are the different variables that we have to send to the server in order to make the action happen. And on the right-hand side, this is the way that we set it up through a curl, which is in code, right? But again, we don't have to know how to code. It's just telling us the way that we have to set things up. And usually the curl in this case has a URL, which is the action that we're taking, telling the server, hey, we want to enrich leads. We want to send this information somewhere else. And then we have the headers, which usually are a way for the actual server to authorize that this is your account. And the way it does that is through something called an API key, which we use for tons of things. OpenAI API key, we use Claude API keys, Perplexity API keys. It's just sort of a way for the server to know, like a password, to say, hey, this key, it's only for me, for my account. So you can take action on my account and you know it's my account if it's this key. And then we have content type application.json. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. It's just a way for us to tell it to format the information the right way. And then D, which is the body, which are these parameters. So these variables, which we send through to the actual server to make things happen. And if that confused you even more, then just wait until we build the API request because it will be very, very easy. And then the last API documentation will be ClickUp. As you can see, I'm just showing you the example. So you get to see the reoccurrence in the structure of an API documentation, which is the one right here. On the left-hand side, we have the types of request. In the middle, we have the summary, the URL, the type of request, which is post, the title. And then here will be the parameters that we have to send through to the server to say, hey, here's what you have to do, here's how to do it, and so on. And on the right-hand side, this is the way that we set it up, which is the exact same. And as you can see, the thing that we really care about is the curl request, because this is the right-hand side part of these API documentations, which allow us to be able to know exactly how we set things up. And if you read API documentations, a lot of the times, or most of the times, you will see something that looks like these. These are 3 random API documentations, and they all follow the same exact structure. So let's set up the API request. Let me give you a use case. Let's say we want to get the weather of a country or a location, right? If you go here to weather, We can do the open weather map, but there's actually this other software, which is called the Weather API. So if I go here to Weather API, there's this software right here, Free Weather API, which isn't listed here, right? And this is when we start using the HTTP request, okay? So HTTP request, again, like I mentioned before, is on the case where we can't find the exact software for the specific action that we're taking. So we actually make our sort of custom API call, which is saying, hey, even though we might not have an N8N, it doesn't mean it's impossible, right? We can still make the actual request, which is where the HTTP request comes in. So all I have to do is go here, put HTTP, and now we get to this page. The first thing is the type of requests, whether it's a get, delete, head, options, pat, post, put, which we went through just now. And we have options head, which I've never used, so probably not something that you should know about. Then we have the URL, which is the action that we're taking, which we get from the API documentation. Then we have the authentication, which we'll go through in just a second. And then we have the parameters, which I mentioned will be here. And then also the body, which is this right here, right? Or you can also use JSON, which we get from the API documentation. Now we'll have to set one up so you understand. And let's go to the freeweatherapi.com. We get here. And now I'm saying, hey, I don't have it within N8N. So I really have to go to the docs. And usually you find this here. So docs. All right, so this right here is the API documentation. And so all we have to go is to the request, right? So we have the getting started, we have the authentication, we have the request URL, we have a bunch of things, but the thing that we really care about is the bulk request, which is the request, which will be up down here, I believe. Yeah, down here, which will be the request that we will use as an example for the actual API request that we do within N8N. So all we have to do is copy this, go here and set up an HTTP request, import curl, just paste it here. Now we can see that everything was done for us. We have the post, we have the URL, we have the fields, the key, the queue, which in this case would be, we can see here, we can see that we can do the city name, we can do the US zip code, UK postcode, and so on, which is required. And then we have the API key, which is the one right here, which is sort of a password that says, hey, this is my account, this is related to me, just use mine. And the body in this case, we actually don't need this because this is just an example. So I can delete this and we can just work with this. So type of request, which is post, URL, which is the URL that we use. So what is the action that we're taking? And then we have the key, which is the API key, which we find on my account. So when you make a free account, you can go here to the dashboard and up here, you will copy the API key and paste it back here. And then the queue will be the city name. So we can do London or whatever it is. And I press execute step, which will now execute the step. So as you can see here, it successfully ran this. And I get the weather, so the current weather, the temperature of that specific place, which we can then use for whatever it is. Right, so now you got to see exactly what it's like to build an API request, an API call, which we call. And this is exactly what you can then use in between your automation steps. So let's say we had a next node, which would be, let's do an edit fields, and we wanted to get the temperature. So temperature in Celsius, 9.3. Yeah. Thank God I'm not in London. I can execute the step, and this will now call the server, bring the data back, and then here you can see that the temperature was 9.3 because this is a variable that we found here. But again, the reason why we use an HTTP is because if I go here to Free Weather API, it's not listed here. It's not here, right? And N8N only has about 400 to 500. It has the main softwares, but sometimes softwares that we want here are not here, which is exactly why we have to then go to the API documentation and find or understand how we can set up the API request. All right, so that right there is the full API Fundamentals 101. So now you're able to understand exactly how things work, how softwares talk to each other, and what it is that we actually do when we can't find softwares within our automation platforms. And check out this video on the screen where I show you everything that you have to know about the Claude new MCP feature that allows you to create N8N workflows and AI agents just by using a single prompt. With that being said, I hope you found value from this video, and I'll see you in the next one.